I begin first in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. I thank God for the ability to come here, the ability to come together and congregate, to be able to spend such time together when there are such tragedies across the world. I thank God that we're able to come together and speak about such a noble and important topic of Muslim leadership in the United States, which is not something that's new. Let me stress, it's not something that's new. Muslims have been here since the very beginning. It is a false idea to believe that this is a new subject or that Muslim leadership is something that is new to this country. And so when I speak about this topic, first of all, I want you to realize that some of the themes which will be addressed in my topic will be echoed in other communities beyond the Muslim American experience. So other people of other faiths, of other cultures as well, will be able to relate to some of the topics, some of the themes I will be addressing here. And then after I'm done with this very brief talk, I would love to hear from you any sort of suggestions or comments or questions that you may have, whatever your background may be. Although to a certain extent, I'll be driving this almost specifically to the Muslims in the community, but everyone here who doesn't necessarily self-identify as a Muslim, I would love to hear also what you have to say, and I believe that you're also able to learn something as well from this. So, as I begin this topic, which will be specifically on Islamic chaplaincy, which is an area of Islamic or Muslim leadership in America that I feel most comfortable speaking about because it is the one where in which that I myself apply and the one that I've been studying for the past 3 years. And I've also chosen this topic of Muslim chaplaincy or Islamic chaplaincy because not that many people are aware of what a Muslim chaplain is within the American Muslim community and beyond. It's actually a rather new role within the American Muslim leadership and within the American society. Now, of course, what I'm going to say here tonight and also this position can also be applied to those within a Canadian background or those within the Canadian Muslim community and even Muslims in Europe as well. So let us begin. Bismillah. Now, for too long, the Muslim American community has been plagued with something that I call the super Muslim ideal. Okay, the super Muslim ideal. And this is believing that one single person can do everything that is needed in the community to make us a healthy and vibrant community. Now, this super Muslim ideal, which I'm calling it this, it has had some damaging effects upon the community. First of all, by raising the bar so high for any one individual to never meet. And also by making us so critical of anyone who steps forward to try to assist the community because although they're good in this aspect, they're bad in that aspect. Because they're good here, they're not good there. Oh yeah, they're doing great in the civil rights, but you know what, they don't know that much about theology and so on and so forth. This is a plague. This is a paradigm shift, which before I get into the topic of Islamic chaplaincy, we need to address and we need to change. And I'm going to propose, before I talk about Islamic chaplaincy, a radical paradigm shift away from this super Muslim ideal. Now, this super Muslim ideal also has some effects that we see within our communities. Like, for example, when a mosque is looking for an imam to lead them, just listen to what people are saying his qualifications have to be. He's got to have memorized the Quran. He's got to have graduated from a Muslim university. He's got to be a fluent speaker in Arabic, a fluent speaker in English. He's got to be good with kids. He's got to be good with adults. He's got to be good with the old. He's got to be young, but not too young, right? If he's good looking too, that's a plus, right? And so all of these little things that people want from their imam that comes from this super Muslim ideal, because they expect one person to be able to take care of all of this. Right? Now, in essence, communities are looking for that super Muslim. And we need to change that. Another ill effect of this super Muslim ideal is that it excuses the American Muslim community from the blame of not being where they want to be. because the super Muslim is not here yet. No one good enough has stepped forward to make the changes that need to be done. So it's not our fault. No one good enough has taken charge. The super Muslim has not yet arrived. Yet nobody alone can actually tackle the numerous challenges which the American Muslim community faces. Nobody alone is qualified or trained to be able to handle all of the diverse avenues that we as an American Muslim community need to tackle to be able to be a healthy and vibrant community. Now it's kind of interesting too when you think about it that we have this super Muslim ideal, because every other aspect of our life is compartmentalized, right? Our government is broken up into departments. You have education, energy, defense, so on and so forth, agriculture. We have our healthcare system, which is broken up into pieces. You have children, adults, mental health, physical health, dentistry. You have optometry, right? Even at this school, you have, 8 different colleges. You have engineering, management. Actually, I checked out. You have here education, engineering, humanities and fine arts, natural sciences, nursing, public health, behavioral sciences, agriculture, and management. Was there anything that I missed? That's a bunch of different colleges, a bunch of different subjects. And I doubt that anyone here feels like they're proficient in every single one of them. Yet, when we walk off this campus and we walk into the mosque, we expect our leaders to be proficient in everything. When we talk about the needs of the community, we talk about solving the problems by using the super Muslim ideal. Well, I have some sobering news for everyone here today. The super Muslim ideal paradigm is dead. The kryptonite, reality. There's no super Muslim that's going to step forward to take care of the needs of the community. And we need to change this paradigm. We need to change this understanding and this way that we look at how to solve our problems in the community. Rather than placing the responsibility in this idealized super Muslim, we need to place responsibility in the hands of the collective, talented community. Everybody has something that they can add to the community. Everybody has something that they can contribute. Whether you are a, well-versed Muslim, whether you are just kind of on the brink, whether or not you are Christian, whether or not you are Baha'i, whether or not you are Jewish, Buddhist, atheist, whatever, everybody in the human community has something to contribute to society. Everybody. And so this paradigm shift, which I'm proposing, needs to happen now. It needs to happen now. So as I'm letting that sink in, I'm going to transition into one particular role within the Islamic leadership, American Muslim leadership, that is most familiar to me. And one that is new and emerging, and I think will be able to help respond to a lot of the issues which we as a community are facing today. And that is the Muslim chaplain. Now, most people don't actually know what a Muslim chaplain is. So let me give you a brief sort of definition. A Muslim chaplain provides religious and pastoral services within a secular setting. Meaning that, well, let me contrast it. Imams, for example, they're hired by a religious group, usually a mosque. And at that, usually the board members of that mosque. And they cater to a specific community who usually has like-minded ideas. But the Muslim chaplain, rather than being selected to necessarily guide like the whole community, they have a specific service which is to care for the pastoral needs of the community. In a sense, care for the well-being of the community. And this is often found within universities, which is more so spreading, prisons, in the military and also in hospitals that you see the chaplains being hired. And they are trained to care for people and their pastoral needs in the sense of, again, someone's well-being. A Muslim chaplain is not there to necessarily tell people what is right or wrong about their belief system or the way they understand Islamic law. They're there to say, so your mom recently passed away. How does that make you feel? So you're having some problems at home. How does that make you feel? They're there to help touch on the emotional issues. In fact, that well-being. A person might know what's right or wrong. In fact, I'm going to mention a story a little bit about that. But tackling how to deal with that, how to interpret what's right and wrong into your life, that is where the Muslim chaplain can come in. Now, the certified chaplain is trained to provide this pastoral care. And they care for the well-being of the person. And let me give you just an example from real life, from my own experience, about how a Muslim chaplain can actually help the specific community, the Muslim community. While attending a mosque one evening, I was stopped by a young Muslim man, about 19 or 20 years old. And he asked me, like often as a convert, you get this question all the time, what brought you to Islam? But when he asked that question, I could tell in his eyes that it wasn't just the, tell me like a nice uplifting story. He was desperately trying to understand something about Islam that gave me the strength in his eyes to give up the type of lifestyle which I could have lived if I wasn't Muslim. All right? He was looking for that type of strength, desperately trying to understand how it is that I was able to give up the type of pressures that he's facing in his community college. The same individual, let's just call him Ahmed, I spoke to him that night. For about an hour, we're walking around the mosque that evening. And I was trying to give him the best advice that I had, and I found out while talking to him that he just was looking for someone to understand where he was coming from. He felt that were he to talk to the Imam would just give him a legal verdict. Alcohol, haram. Dating, haram. As in prohibited. You can't do this. And so he actually came from a practicing Muslim family, but he was also scared to tell them about the peer pressure which he was facing at school. So he didn't know who to talk to. And this is an instance wherein, at that time, actually I wasn't an imam or I wasn't a Muslim chaplain. But at this time, and in this instance, you see where a Muslim chaplain can do some service in the community. They're there to address these issues. They're there to help people address these personal issues in their lives, how to reconcile what they believe with the context of the life that we all live. So though I worried and prayed for Ahmed, and we, like I said, spoke for about an hour that night, afterwards I did not see him. And I asked about him. What happened to Ahmed? And I found out that his family had discovered that he was using alcohol and that he was dating women. And so they asked him to move out. And I never saw Ahmed again. So this situation illustrates the type of issues which our community is facing, which until, and I'm going to say that the Muslim chaplain can help respond to these issues, but most places don't have anyone to be able to take care and respond to these type of issues that people are facing, and in this case, the Muslim youth. Now, like Ahmed, most American youth are going through developmental changes, whether it be physical, psychological, social, and on top of these changes that they're going through, they're also facing the peer pressures of their parents to maintain cultural and religious customs. On top of this, at school, particularly in the college context, you have friends who are pressuring them to adopt certain things which they know and they believe to be wrong. Like, for example, alcohol, premarital sex, dating, and so forth. But they don't know who to turn to. They don't know who to talk to. And they fear that were they to leave aside these practices, these peer, what their friends are pressuring them to do, they would be ostracized by their friends because they're different. Because they have a different belief system. And then yet, if they accept that and they do these actions, just like in the case of Ahmed, they become ostracized by their family and the religious community. So where can such people turn? Where can such people turn? Now, because of like a perceived lack of support that such people feel, like Ahmed and other Muslim youth, they don't know who to turn to. While imams at Islamic centers can and should play a crucial role in helping such people as Ahmed, they are not properly trained to actually handle this. In most cases, they are taught the ruling of alcohol, but not how to help someone facing peer pressure to consume it. Now, imams are often unfamiliar with the health services as well in the local community. So when someone approaches them, they don't even know where to direct the person to turn for help. Now, one study actually, which was done in New York City, a survey of 22 different mosques showed that not a single one of the imams, except for one, had any pastoral training. And of those, 91% felt that 91% were educated overseas or were born overseas and felt that language was a barrier between them and second-generation Muslims. So again, we're having difficulty connecting with the Muslim youth. This lack of connection with the Muslim youth is even more disturbing when further studies show that it's not because that they're not attending the mosque that makes them estranged from the community. Because 41% of Muslim youth, in at least one study, attend mosque at least once a week, which is 14% higher than the average worship service of people in their age group. So Muslims are attending mosque. So they actually believe, the same study shows, that at the same time while attending mosque so often and in such large numbers, that they're least likely to believe that their community is improving. That's disturbing. And it tells us something very important. That they believe that the right services are not being provided by their Islamic centers. Now, imams can play a crucial role if they have the right training. However, American Muslims presently lack any sufficient educational institution to actually train imams to really address the present-day context. For example, most schools that teach you the traditional Islamic studies, right, like for example the tajweed and the Islamic law and theology and so forth, they don't actually teach you pastoral care. And at the same time, many institutions that teach you pastoral care don't teach you the traditional Islamic sciences. So most of the times, an imam, if he has studied at a school, we have a lot of imams who are actually self-studied, but if they have studied at a school, they haven't even covered this type of material in their curriculum. And so when mosques are looking for an imam to hire, the pastoral care and whether or not they have this education is not even something that is on their list most times. It's not even something that they're looking for. So due to this, you have imams who are varying in degrees of education. You could have some who have come back from overseas after graduating, maybe from a very prestigious Islamic university overseas. But when they come here, they don't yet understand the context. They've been away for 4, 8 years, and they don't understand, they don't have the tools, more importantly, to address these. And so my proposal is that imams and chaplains work together. That communities take advantage of their local Muslim chaplains. So for example, if a community discovers that a Muslim chaplain works at a hospital in their community, due to the nature of that type of occupation, that Muslim chaplain is in the best respect able to help someone who's dealing with a loss in the family, dealing with someone who's battling an addiction, for example. And so, if a Muslim chaplain exists in a community, that outside community should take advantage of him and consider him or her, because actually Muslim chaplains can also be female, that they take advantage of the fact that these people are in their community. And furthermore, that if a community can't afford it, they actually hire their own Muslim chaplain. Now, there are some Muslim chaplains who you might have already heard of because of the fact that they are becoming a little bit more well-known, especially university chaplains. Those in education usually get more publicity than those in a hospital, prison, or military, although you guys are probably familiar with Yusuf E., who unfortunately is well-known because he was put in Guantanamo. You guys remember that? About 5-6 years ago? Okay. How old are you guys? So he was a Muslim chaplain and he worked in Guantanamo, and the military put him away because they believed he was working with the prisoners in a secretive way, which he was later excused of. So, yeah, subhanAllah. And so, so some of the people who you might hear of today, and you should know of because they're great people to turn to, is, for example, at Princeton University you have Suhaib Sultan, at Yale University of Omar Bajwa, at Georgetown you have Yahya Hendi, at Brown University you have David Coolidge, at Trinity and Wesleyan you have Marwa Ali, and then myself, I work at a private boarding school in Connecticut called Choate Rosemary Hall. So we have these varying different people who can be, and this is just a small list, and this is primarily just the East Coast. But these are people who communities should look to as assets to help the surrounding wider Muslim community. Now, Muslim chaplains like those I have named, and many others, should be sought out because the community is starving for mental health services. And when I say mental health services, it's not just simply like a person with schizophrenia or something like that. It is basically kind of like what I described with Ahmed earlier. Okay, a person trying to find out how to deal with peer pressures. Or even a person who is facing an alcohol addiction. You know, it's unfortunate that as Muslims we of course understand that alcohol is something that's prohibited by our faith. But do we offer anyone a way to deal with their addiction if they're facing it? Or do we just kick them out of the community, even if they want to get over it? Do we provide them a way to get over it? Again, this is a service that we should deeply consider. Because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there was a companion at the time who used to get drunk all the time, right? And there was actually a penalty which they had to pay for that. And one time, one of the companions, they started just accusing him, like, you know, come on, man, like, they started harassing the person who was getting drunk all the time. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, he stopped him and said, hey, don't harass him, because I swear by God, he loves God and his messenger. The fact that he was addicted to alcohol did not get in the way that the Prophet, peace upon him, still said that this person still loved God and his messenger. But he was facing an addiction. So do we have routes like this in our community? Or do we just kick people out if we see that they're battling this problem? A healthy community provides alternatives. Now, an imam and a Muslim chaplain working together can actually provide professional services for the future of our community. Interestingly enough, when the Muslim chaplain and the imam work together, they can actually assist each other in what each other is better qualified to handle. For example, the imam is usually better qualified to handle questions of fiqh, like for example matters of prayer and so on and so forth, fasting and so on, matters of theology, and also teaching aspects of the Quran. But the chaplain is better trained to deal with those social needs. And so when a person has a particular issue which deals with that, they can be directed to the chaplain. And if the question is more so about like fiqh or law or theology, they can be directed to the imam unless the chaplain knows the answer to the question. And while working together, the imam and the chaplain will actually be teaching each other too these skills, right? And they'll be teaching each other this knowledge, which will again help the community. And I think like most people, when we notice the imam is usually a very busy person. So providing more people to come in to be able to help out some of this stuff will be a welcomed alternative, I believe, by many imams. So, in conclusion, I would just like to state that the community has growing and diverse needs. The ideal way for these needs to be fulfilled or responded to is not to expect our imams to be super Muslims, nor to allow our imams to believe that they are super Muslims. Because all it does is it means that critical issues are not being fully addressed by people who have been trained to respond to that particular problem. Rather, we need to recognize that there are different roles within the community that need to be filled by the people who have been properly trained to fill those roles. We need to understand that we as a community share the responsibility of the community, and not one single super Muslim is going to stand up or rise up and right all the wrongs, solve all the problems. The problems and the health of the community is equally shared in each of our own hands. Now, this will take time for us to make this transition from the super Muslim ideal or paradigm to another one, which is a more pluralistic idea of leadership, the idea of multiple roles. And it'll take investing in people instead of just buildings. It's unfortunate that so much money is dedicated to buildings, millions of dollars, and then they want to pay an imam $30,000 a year. And he's the only person who works at the Islamic Center, working 50 hours a week. But he's doing it for the sake of God, so, you know, don't worry about his family. So, that's another issue. So this is the perfect time, I believe, to make this transition because those before us have already laid the groundwork. They've already created the Islamic sacred spaces. They've already laid the groundwork for creating these Islamic centers. Now we're at a transitional point in American Muslim history where we're investing now and need to invest in people who are truly the pillars of the buildings that we're placing them in. And the increasing reliance upon the mosque to provide not only religious services for the Muslim community, but also mental health and social has shown, and I hope that I've shown here tonight as well, that providing leaders who are trained in pastoral skills has become both needed and necessary for the health of our community. Thank you so much. So I will take just
imams and universities surrounding the area. But what do you think is a realistic way for Muslims, specifically at UMass, to go to these people? Because it's not really realistic since they're far away and they have their own communities to serve. And we don't have our own chaplains, so where do Muslims here at UMass turn to?
That's a great question because it's facing the reality of things right now. And one thing that can happen is that you can actually bring Muslim chaplains onto campus to provide seminars. And those seminars can be addressed either to specifically the Muslim leadership in the community, so they can teach the Muslim leadership the skills that they've been taught as Muslim chaplains, or they can specifically come to the community itself, and they can also be there to help provide some answers to common questions, like, for example, a particular theme. The Muslim chaplain can come and speak directly to the particular theme of how to deal with peer pressure, particularly in, because it's such a broad topic, but particularly in like one subtopic like alcohol or something like that. So bringing people to come in to provide seminars, so at least that knowledge and those skills spread if you don't at least have the person there to teach it and to be part of it directly. And it's also good to maintain a relationship with local, even somewhat distant Muslim chaplains, or people who have been trained in this particular area? That's a good question.
Don't they have chaplains in Mount Holyoke and Amherst?
Well, the religious affairs office of the 5 colleges, basically the private colleges in the area, they hire usually a Muslim chapter, not necessarily trained to be a chaplain, but an adult who can sit and listen to people's regular problems. And we have, I think Amherst College has Brother Muhammad Abdul-Az, and my Holyoke College has his wife, Liza. But I think at some point, even Smith College has somebody, but I'm not sure how regular and how well trained they are.
No, and as you pointed out, those service providers are not really given the importance or the importance of being hired and given the proper support.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's all right.
Also, one other aspect is the fact that certification for Muslim chaplains is something that's only new right now. So, for example, the school which I'm attending, they're the first place to offer, Hartford Seminary, they're the first place to offer Islamic chaplaincy certificate. So, it's, at the same time, you have places that don't know to ask for it. So not as many people, they might be a Muslim chaplain by occupation, but they haven't been certified. It doesn't necessarily mean I don't want to knock anyone down because Muslim chaplains have been around for quite a while. But a certified Muslim chaplain is something that's very new, which means that they've received pastoral training.
So how long is that training?
Actually, it is, depending on how much time you have to dedicate, it takes about 1.5 years. It takes about 1.5 years full time. So if you want to do the full Islamic chaplaincy program at Hartford Seminary, it's actually 3.5 years because it's also academic and pastoral.
So
yes?
I'm just wondering, what does that involve? What do you learn? Like,
for example, the very first class which I took under the guise of Islamic chaplaincy was a course called, what was it, Addiction and Spirituality. Mm-hmm. And so it really spoke specifically to how spirituality has helped people facing addiction, and and it was great. I was honestly like one of the best classes I've ever took because they actually brought people in who had gone through AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and talked about what exactly about religion, spoke to them that helped them through their crisis.
good.
Yeah.
So here at UMass, we can't get the university to pay for a chaplain because I guess because it's a public university.
Yes.
So they don't pay for I guess religious stuff. I don't know. But so how would we have something maybe similar to what you were talking about? Because you were talking about imam and masjid and a masjid community like that, right? So as an MSA, what could we do to kind of substitute for that? Because we have those real issues that you've been talking about, like alcoholism, and people feel like I'm not going to come to the MSA because they're just going to judge me or something like that. So how would you deal with those real issues on UMass campus?
There's actually 2 ways that have been successfully accomplished at a state school or at a public school. One at Exeter, which actually I'm not sure if it's completely private or public, but what they've done is they have used their alumni to be able to donate so much money to pay for a Muslim chaplain on campus. So just as long as it doesn't come from the school itself, it can come from an outside body. So Exeter, they're actually in the process of hiring a Muslim chaplain right now. They actually they contacted all their Muslim alumni, right? And other people as well who recognize what good a Muslim chaplain can bring to campus, whether or not you're Muslim or non-Muslim. And they actually asked for donations to cover, a year or so much time. And then that actually was a way that they were able to do it. At the University of Michigan, which they just hired their first Muslim chaplain, I believe they did something very similar. They looked for donations. In fact, it was a national campaign. They looked for donations across the United States to be able to help pay for the position. And it's interesting because I believe they, I'm not completely sure about this, but I think they refused foreign, contributors just to show that we're going to stand on our own 2 feet, And if that was the case, I definitely agree, especially in the type of atmosphere we have nowadays. People, if you have any tie to anything, they start to question it, which is unfortunate. So, let me look at this question here. Where in America can you get education to become a chaplain? How long is the program? Well, actually, the programs are becoming more diverse. Right now, the best program, and I might sound biased, but that's where I'm going, but it's also the only program, is the one at Hartford Seminary. You guys might be familiar with Dr. Ingrid Mattson. Okay, she was the spearhead of the program initially. Now she's moving to Canada, but she's been spearheading the program for about 10 years now. And so how long is the program? As I said earlier, if you already have a master's and you just want to get the chaplaincy certificate, it's about 1.5 years realistically. It says 1 year, but it's about 1.5 years realistically. Because you have to do something called clinical pastoral education, which is where you work within a clinical environment as basically a supervised chaplain. And you have to do I think 300 hours of it or something like that. So it takes time. How do you see the future of young American Muslims? It's a very, you know, I want to say it this way, that if I may kind of change this to, be a little bit more to what I can address, that I see that the future of Islam in general, and American Islam, is that it's going to become more self-identified, that we're going to become more and more independent in the way that we understand ourselves. Now, if you study and you take a look at Muslim American history, you see that there's been a Muslim community here in the United States since prior to the Constitution itself. And I'm talking more than just, what most people know about African Americans, right, being the slaves, right? About 20% or something like that of slaves were Muslim, right? I'm talking about a real, even beyond that, history of American Muslims in the United States since the beginning of the United States, that we've been here. But in all actuality, because of, I'll just be specific, ever since 1965, when we had changes in the way that we deal with immigration, we had a larger amount of Muslim immigrants coming to the United States. And the Muslim American community at that time, it was growing in one particular direction. But then when we started getting a lot more people from overseas coming in, they started to tell the American Muslim community what to do. Oh, you're doing that wrong. Oh, you should be dressing this way. Oh, you should do this and that. And I'm not trying to come down, but I'm trying to state a reality. That now we have this mentality because of, since the 1960s or so, a large group came in, that the Muslim identity is somewhat new to the United States because it's only recently been placed here. But no, this is just, there was a surge in American Muslim life here, population since then. But Muslim Americans have been here since the beginning. I was just mentioning earlier that the area right now, that there was a lot of controversy about the Ground Zero Mosque and so forth. Do you know that actually it was in the 1930s or something like that, that area used to be called Little Syria? Because they had so many Syrian Americans living there. So they're talking about, this is sacred American non-Muslim ground. Okay, but what about Ahmed and Muhammad, who used to live up the block? That area, we have a rich history, but sometimes people take advantage or don't know about that history. So my vision for the future of American Muslims in general is that we'll become more independent. We'll become more independent. We'll take what we need to learn from others, while at the same time learning how to stand on our own 2 feet. Any other questions or comments or suggestions? Yeah?
I think this is an awesome thing. How well